Today on Pilgrim Radio's His People, Daniel and Tara Rice talking about their upcoming ministry during the Summer Olympics in Japan.
Everything that we have set up and planned, projects, evangelism material, all these things, is particularly geared towards the Japanese lost and also engaging and encouraging and partnering with the local Japanese church.
Daniel and Tara Rice, next. Much of the world's attention will be focused on Tokyo, Japan this summer for the Olympics to be held July 24th through August 9th. Tara and Daniel Rice and their team of about 350 volunteers will be busy sharing the gospel during the Olympics. They're the Olympics ministry coordinators for the Southern Baptists International Mission Board, or IMB. They spoke to us from Tokyo. Daniel, before we discuss your and Tara's outreach during the Olympics, tell us how God called you to serve in Japan.
For me, I grew up in Atlanta, Georgia. I was exposed to a lot of Southern Baptist missionaries, particularly IMB missionaries growing up. My mom made sure that I was exposed to missions, and through that, from being a little guy all the way through college, I was able to have a lot of opportunities to engage with the mission field. And then also just growing up in Atlanta, I was exposed to a lot of East Asians of different backgrounds, Chinese, Japanese, Koreans, the whole gambit there. So I was really blessed to be able to be friends with those people from those backgrounds, be able to meet their families and those types of things. God was priming the pump, so to speak, with that. And then I was in college, and back as a freshman in high school, I learned about the Journeyman program, and that stuck with me all the way through college. And God revealed to me during college that the next step was the Journeyman program. So senior year of college, I went to my interview week with the IMB to figure out where I should go, if I was qualified to go, all that good stuff. And then I left there with Tokyo as my number one spot. You get to pick your top 3 locations, and then they sort it out after you leave. And when I was in Farrell Sherrill, Mississippi on a spring break mission trip, I got the phone call saying, "Hey, we've decided to send you to Tokyo. Do you accept or turn it down?" And I accepted it. And I called my mom, and I was like, "Mom, guess what? I'm going to Tokyo." And she was like, "They just had a big earthquake there." And it turns out that this day was March 11th, 2011, the same day as the Great East Japan Earthquake triple disaster, where there was the big earthquake, the big tsunami, and the nuclear disaster. I had no clue because I was in the middle of nowhere, Farrell Sherrill, Mississippi. And I got back to society where I could see the TV news reports and those kinds of things, and I could not deny that there was a special moment for me personally solidifying that call to Japan. And then shortly after that, a couple months later, I started my journeyman program for 2 years in Japan, church planting in Tokyo on the same team that we are on now. And I just fell in love with particularly this people group. I fell in love with Tokyo. I fell in love with church planting, all that stuff. Came back to the States, did seminary after that, and we got married during that time. And we're back here now. And something also that's kind of cool how all that ties together was when I was little, about 7 years old, the Olympics were in my hometown. That was Atlanta. I was just a little guy, probably 7, 8 years old, and my mom and our church, we were together in Atlanta, reaching people with the gospel, handing out tracts. So I had my Royal Ambassador's vest on in the middle of a hot, sweltering Atlanta heat, handing out tracts as a little guy. And it kind of comes full circle, and it's a little bit poetic even.
What about you, Tara? What's your story?
Yeah, so I grew up in San Diego County, California, and I grew up at an evangelical free church, and I hadn't really heard much about missions in general until I went to college at California Baptist University. And CBU has a very substantial short-term mission team. I remember every year they would have a missions chapel at the front end of the year to kind of recruit and garner support for the mission trips that they send every summer. And so I remember every year the Lord would tug at my heart during that missions chapel, but I was so intimidated by the fundraising aspect, and I was so scared of that and asking people for help and support and money and things like that. So I didn't go until my last opportunity was the summer between my junior and senior year, because I was going to graduate a semester early. So that was my last chance. And so I've told the Lord, okay, so you've been tugging at my heart every year and telling me that I should go. And so you're going to have to make this happen with the fundraising. If you want me to do this, I'm going to trust you to do this. And so I signed up, and within like 2 months of fundraising, I was done. And it was so silly how easy it was.
Mm-hmm.
And I had been so intimidated. But so when I signed up, you could, again, just like with the IMB, you could put your top 3 places or teams that you wanted to join. And really, I was like, I don't know. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
The Lord hasn't told me like a specific people group or even like continent. So I just said, I don't know, undecided. Put me wherever you want. And so the CBU mobilization, the Office of Mobilization, they take the time to pray over those applications and really seek the Lord as they place people. And I'm really thankful for that, because they put me on the team to Japan. And so that was my first international mission trip. It was my first time in Asia, first time in Japan, obviously. And when I was here, the Lord just really broke my heart for the Japanese people. There are a lot of things that plague the Japanese culture that really connected to my personal like family background. So in Japan, you have a big alcoholism problem, you have major addiction problems, you have depression and suicide. Suicide is one of the biggest problems here. And so that actually connects really strongly with my family background and my testimony as a result of that. And so I was just broken for these people after that trip. And so I came away saying, I can't go home and pretend like I don't know about this and just go on with my life. And so after I graduated college, I decided to come back for 3 months with another organization called TEAM, the Evangelical Alliance Mission,
Mm-hmm.
and I worked with them for 3 months here. And during that time, I really sought the Lord, and I was like, okay, I know you've given me a passion for these people, so if this is where you would have me, just make that clear to me. And within the first couple of weeks of that 3-month period, I had a conversation with my housemate, and she told me about a Japanese superstition that really, really connected with my testimony in a deep way. And it was so heartbreaking, because this superstition is like demonic, very demonic. But the answer to protecting yourselves from these demons is throwing beans around your house. It made me so sad, because we actually know what hope we can have through Jesus and through a relationship with Christ. And so that was the moment where I was like, okay, I can't go away and know that these people need this hope and this truth and just go back to the States. And so that was when Daniel and I started officially dating, because we knew that we would be in Japan long term and we would get married before coming back to Japan. And then we went to seminary and got all that stuff done and got married, and then came back here with the IMB.
Well, that's a wonderful story, and thank you for explaining that, both of you. It gives people listening to this a great idea of how God, in many different ways, leads people into a particular kind of ministry and even to a particular place. And here you are now. You're in Japan. You've been there since, is it 2017? Is that correct?
Yep.
And you're now the Olympics Ministry Coordinators for Tokyo for the International Mission Board. You mentioned the IMB. For people that aren't Southern Baptists are going to know that's the International Mission Board. It's a sending agency there with the Southern Baptist Church. Tell us about your preparations for that particular outreach.
When we were getting started trying to figure out what direction to even go with this, we had to make a decision. There are two options to focus on in order to do this thing well, and we had to pick one or the other. So our target for our ministry could either be the internationals coming to Tokyo, because we're going to have, this is a very accessible place to get to. It's a place that people want to come to. So we're going to have a lot of representation from the world here, to reach out to those people, or to focus solely on the Japanese here. So for us and our Tokyo team strategy, and the whole reason we're even here in the city to begin with, is to reach this unreached people group with the gospel. So that set the bearing for what we wanted to do, and everything else that followed. So everything that we have set up and planned, projects, evangelism material, all these things, is particularly geared towards the Japanese lost, and also engaging and encouraging and partnering with the local Japanese church. So from there, we were thinking, how can we do this? What are some ways that we can be fulfilling three different types of roles? And to use a sports analogy, we want to be coaches, we want to be water boys, and we want to be cheerleaders.
Mm-hmm.
So in that case, we want to, as a coach, or in that kind of coach mindset, we want to train. Training is such a big part of mobilizing believers. So offering opportunities for training leading up to the Olympics, and then the Olympics time, the ministry that we do there, being the actual kind of like the lab part of your training. So getting out there and trying and having the opportunities to fail and succeed and really solidify a solid and clear witness in your life. But also modeling those things. Coaches model. So we want to model what it looks like to clearly communicate the gospel, have gospel conversations and not presentations. Also be that person who will come alongside and get in the trenches with them until the next step is achieved. As water boys, or ball boys, or whatever you want to use with that analogy, we are here to serve the local church. So we want to do the things that the background nitty-gritty stuff in order to enable the believers here to focus on the main thing, such as evangelism and prayer and those types of things. So whatever it takes to do that, to support our local believers here, we want to do that. So whether it's at one of our event spaces and it's changing out a trash can liner, or it's cleaning up a table, or this, that, or the other, if we can do that so that frees up our local believers here to do the main task, that is a huge deal. And then as cheerleaders, we want to be their biggest fans. We want to be the ones that are saying, hey, you can do this. You have everything that you need, and you have our support, and we're praying for you. And anything that we can do to make you feel loved and empowered, we're here to do it. So with that, we have our three major projects, along with sort of a in-between filler, just kind of the song of the whole project. And so the three projects are the ECHO project, and that is, you can retroactively fit in an acronym in there saying the Evangelistic Coffee House Outreach.
Okay.
And so that's what ECHO pretty much stands for.
Is that at the Olympic Village, particularly, the ECHO project?
No. So we will not be on any official Olympics property with any of these projects necessarily, but we're getting venues. For example, the church that we're at right now, it's called Tokyo Baptist Church. And it's actually a Southern Baptist church, part of the Hawaii Pacific Baptist Convention. And that's one of our venues. It's got a pretty large footprint, especially for a Japanese church, smack dab in the middle of the heart of Tokyo. So the ECHO project will be a coffee house and a stage space. So in the coffee house, we're going to be pairing up our international missionaries or mission teams coming in. So that's Southern Baptist Church groups and Southern Baptist entity groups. So whether it's a group from a church or like a Baptist College Ministries from like Texas, for example, we're going to be pairing them up with local believers here. And they're going to be engaging guests in the coffee house. We're going to be serving free iced coffee and offering an opportunity to get out of the crazy hot humidness of the Tokyo summer. Together, they're going to engage those guests and have gospel conversations. And also in the stage space, we're going to have an opportunity for professional athletes and coaches to get on the stage and share their testimonies and those stories that relate to those testimonies that had to do with their sports or their discipline. And then it's also an opportunity for us to display the diversity that God has allowed us to have in the church. So that looks like performances, whether it's musical or artistic or anything else that we can think of. Like, for example, we have a guy from Africa that's a member here at TBC, and he's going to rap. And like, that is so cool to be able to display the beautiful diversity that we have in the church. So that's the Echo Project. We hope to have multiple venues of that. If not, what we'll do is we'll have Tokyo as the main venue, and then we might get some of those beverage dispenser backpacks and chests of ice, and we'll just go out to spaces like parks and public places that we can engage people with that. So another project that we have is viewing parties. So viewing parties, and then the other one is open crowd festivals. So those complement each other in a really nice way.
And those have Olympic themes, right?
Yes, they can easily be themed for the Olympics. So the viewing party, for example, is actually having the sports broadcast on a large TV, because if we use a projector, then we have to pay for broadcasting rights. But we get a big TV up there, and this is an opportunity for the church to invite their neighborhood into their space and show them that, one, they're normal people just like them, and two, that Christians aren't weird. They are normal people, but they're also a happy people. They like the same stuff that everyone else does, and they can have a good time. And that's really important for Japanese, because one of the biggest challenges we have here is that cults have made being a Christian here very convoluted. Because of cults that are very prominent in Japan and East Asia, they kind of lump us as Christians in that kind of cult circle. And so we have to differentiate ourselves. And people need to be able to see that this is a safe space. It's a space that people actually care about them and are not adding things to what Jesus has done in order to achieve something. And just to be able to see that your Christian neighbor cares about you and can be your friend.
Daniel and Tara, if I can ask you this. So you are, as I understand it, while the Olympics are going on, of course, before and after as well, but you have decided to focus your outreach specifically on the Japanese people and reaching them, because after all, that's why you went to Japan in the first place. And yet at the same time, what can you tell us about Christianity in Japan? As you've said, sometimes you get lumped in with all the other groups or some of the cultic groups, and yet there must be a certain percentage of the Japanese population that is actually evangelical, Bible-believing Christian people, having put their faith in Jesus as their Savior and so forth. What can you tell us about the size of that group, and then how familiar Japan is in general with Christianity?
Sure, absolutely. So statistically speaking, depending on the source you look at, you might get different percentages of the Christian population in Japan. And the reason for that is some people will lump in Catholics, some people will lump in Mormons and Jehovah's Witnesses into that Christian group. But judging by the most reliable sources, we believe that the percentage of evangelical Bible-believing Christians in Japan is less than 0.5%. And so if you're in a train car of 200 or so people, there might be one Christian. So that's the percentage we're looking at. The Japanese people group is the second largest unreached people group in the entire world. And out of the top 10 largest people groups in the world, the Japanese are the only people group who have complete religious freedom. And so it's just such an incredible opportunity that we have to rally everyone around, all of our churches in America and the Japanese churches, to reach out to their neighbors and to reach out to this unreached people group that in most unreached people groups that are on that list, almost every other one, we wouldn't be able to do this radio interview. We wouldn't be able to hand out Bible portions. We wouldn't be able to do any of that because of the lack of religious freedom. And so Here we have just such a unique opportunity. So the church here does struggle in that most pastors are at least over the age of 60. I think we're nearing like 60% are over 70 or something like that. A large percent are aging. And the Japanese population in general is aging, but especially the Christian church. And so what we want to do, our goal is to reach out to young Japanese people. And if we can reach young Japanese men, especially, women typically are more receptive to the gospel here in Japan, at least. If we can reach out to young Japanese men in a way that is easy for them to understand, that is going to make a huge difference. And the reason I say easy for them to understand is because their understanding of the Bible is extremely limited. For example, when you talk to a Japanese person and you say, "Do you believe in God?" The word for God in Japanese, because of the background of Shintoism and Buddhism, the word for God is essentially like spirits, multiple spirits, not necessarily a creator God. And so they might say, "Yeah, of course, I believe in God," but what they're answering is not what you think they're answering. And so we have to actually start from, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. If you start with Jesus, they're like, "Oh, I've heard of Jesus. Yeah, he was a good teacher, right?" Or they might even say he was one of the gods. And so we really do have to start from the very beginning and establish common understanding of certain words and terms and ideas that we as Westerners we assume is understood, because the Western world has revolved around monotheism for, I don't know, millennia. It's a process for sure. So that's how our gospel presentations are being curated, just starting from absolute zero and working our way up from there.
Well, Tara and Daniel Rice are my guests today on His People. They are missionaries with the Southern Baptist International Mission Board. They are the Olympics Ministry Coordinators for Tokyo during the 2020 Summer Olympics. And as you've both explained, the group that you are trying to reach specifically is actually the indigenous Japanese people, and you have outreaches that take into account the Olympics and kind of using the Olympics as an avenue to share the gospel with them. Are there missionaries with the International Mission Board that are going actually to the Olympics venues to reach the spectators?
With part of our strategy, that last part of that strategy, the kind of the sand between the large rocks, so to speak, is our broad seed sowing strategy. Part of that is pin trading. And so with pin trading, that's a huge part of Olympic culture. It's not something that most people are prepared for, but when they get there, within the first couple of days, they've got pin trading fever. So we've actually developed some trading pins. We've developed 6 trading pins. One is the bridge logo. So if you've seen on our website or any of the articles, our logo that says Connect 2020, that bridge is actually probably a familiar looking tool to, especially many Southern Baptists who have used the colors, like power band colors or those types of things. You have a color at the beginning, like white or gold, and in our case it's going to be gold, then black, then red, then blue, and green. And that whole thing is designed to be a storying tool for the gospel. And then the other 5 pins allow us to focus on one of those particular topics in that gospel conversation. Those tools together work to help us engage people at the Olympics, and it's something that's mobile, so we don't necessarily have to be in a static location to be able to hand these out. We can be strategic in that we can go to stations near the Olympics areas. We can probably go to surrounding areas around the different zones for the Olympics here, because there are 2 zones. There's the Bay Zone and the Heritage Zone, which kind of cover a very wide swath of Tokyo. And so these pins, and then we have some other things, like if we do the mobile coffee thing with the beverage backpacks and things like that, again, that enables us to go to those different places. And then we have some tools called light magazines and spark magazines. We've decided to, instead of making smaller tracts, we're using these magazine-style tracts that have important questions about faith, important topical discussions in them on the front part, and then the second half of that is actually a full portion of Scripture. It's the Book of John, and then there's a companion app that goes with that too. So we can take those things out. The Spark version of that magazine is for kids, so there's some interactive stuff in these magazines, like some mazes and fill in the blanks and just more fun things to engage children's minds and hearts.
Mm-hmm.
All those things together will blend with a digital strategy that we're taking. That allows us to get these materials, whether it's the gospel content that we're sharing, or sending people to the Echo Project locations or a festival or a viewing party or something like that. And it gets in their phone. They have it with them, and they don't have a paper trail or anything to throw away. It's actually on their phone. When we're being able to reduce how much paper and stuff that we're using, which for some people that's important as an ecological thing, but it's also for us. We don't want to just have like tracts and stuff thrown in the trash.
You've been listening to His People on Pilgrim Radio. Many thanks to our guests, Tara and Daniel Rice, Olympics ministry coordinators for Tokyo during the Summer Olympics in Japan. They're with the Southern Baptist International Mission Board. They request prayer as they're involved in preparations. Coming up on tomorrow's program, it's Andre Melvin on a prison program that provides inmates with a biblical studies education.
Part of their 2-year training while they're studying with us, we require them to have the hands-on experience of sharing their faith and ministry. And so when their classes are over during the day, during the evenings, at least between 2 to 6 hours a week, each student is down ministering to these new inmates that are coming in.
That's tomorrow at this same time on His People. Thanks for listening.